G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder with Mags, and welcome back to my hangar. You know what that means, it's time to do a little bit of a review, and today we're taking a look at the Panzerwerfer 42. Now this is going to be a pretty short review, because there's not a huge amount to say about this. This is one of the new rocket tanks added in patch 1.53. It is an attractive looking little machine. I actually like the look of these early German half-tracks. They're really cool looking with all the armour on them. Unfortunately, coolness doesn't help you out in battle. The Panzerwerfer 42 has a lot of problems, and they're easiest showed off here within the hangar. So first things first, we need to take a look at the armour of this thing. So the Panzerwerfer 42 is Era 2, but it's battle rating 4.3. That means it can potentially face 5.3 level tanks. First thing to notice when you look at this thing is the base hull of this tank is only 8mm thick. If you angle it, it doesn't matter what angle you try and get the hull on, the best you'll achieve is about 13mm of effective armour. Now, the side and front of the vehicle has additional armour added. This additional armour is exactly the same thickness as the hull armour, it is 8mm thick. That means you're looking at a grand total of 16mm of solid armour before angling. When you're angled, you might be able to get it out to about 24. It's a battle rating 4.3 vehicle. It's going to be facing a minimum of 3.3, a maximum of 5.3. It doesn't matter how you angle this vehicle. Every shot that hits your hull is going to penetrate you. Now that's the general chassis. Underside of the chassis, so the chassis rails, all of the suspension gear and all of the drive lines are only 5mm thick, and there is almost no armour directly below the tank. So any high explosive detonation underneath the vehicle is going to penetrate straight into the hull without armour at all being an issue. Any hit in any way, shape or form to the bottom of the tank is always going to destroy the suspension equipment, which will immobilise the vehicle. The thickest armour on the vehicle is the mount for the rocket launchers themselves, which is only 10mm thick. Any penetration or any hit of that section is likely going to destroy the vehicle's already limited turret traverse. The launchers themselves can only traverse at 10.9 degrees per second as it is undamaged, so anything that damages those mechanisms is horrific to the performance of the vehicle. And the worst part of the whole lot is the launchers themselves. Now the launchers themselves are again 8mm thick, however you will notice that they are not rolled homogeneous armour, they are gun steel. Armour piercing 7.62mm rounds or even general fire 50 caliber rounds can penetrate 8mm of gun steel, and the rockets are inside of those tubes. You can actually detonate the rockets ammo racking this tank and causing an ammo rack detonation by simply spraying the launcher down with machine gun fire. That's all you need to do to kill this tank. And this has a rather nasty side effect. The more rockets that are inside the tubes, the larger the resulting detonation should you ammo rack the vehicle by hitting the launcher with either your main gun or machine gun fire. If it happens to be a fairly well-loaded tank, the explosion is rather significant. If there happens to be any vehicles within a close proximity to the Panzerwerfer 42, when it gets ammo racked, the resulting explosion will either critically damage these vehicles or possibly destroy them. So that's obviously a very big flaw, but what other problems do we have with this particular vehicle, this particular half-track? Sorry I keep calling it a tank, I don't mean to, it's just what rolls off the tongue. Well, the second major issue is Gaijin's rules for ground forces state that if the vehicle has any less than 2 crew members, it's taken out of the battle as it is combat ineffective due to a lack of crew. The armour on this tank is only 8mm thick, and the largest and easiest part of the tank to hit has 2 of the 3 crew members on board. I would say 90% of the times that I've been destroyed in this vehicle while I've been playing ground forces matches have been the result of being just shot in the crew cabin. It almost has a 100% chance of killing both of those crew members, which immediately takes the tank out of battle. And there's no way to defend yourself against it. In fact, I've even tried driving directly forward into battle, hoping that maybe the engine block would absorb enough of a shell to potentially save me, but that actually doesn't work. If you get shot directly in the radiator, the shell hits the engine block, shatters, not only kills the 2 crew members inside of the tank, but the resulting shrapnel will actually kill the guy on the rocket launchers themselves, and I have had shrapnel penetrate the top plate on the tank, come up through after killing all 3 of the crew members and actually penetrate the gun steel tubes that encase the rockets, blowing the rockets and causing an ammo rack explosion at exactly the same time. So obviously this is a vehicle that isn't built for being shot, and its top speed lists at 47 kilometers an hour, so clearly it should be fast enough to avoid getting shot. Only that's not entirely true. You'll notice that the engine only has 68 horsepower and it's a 7.1 ton vehicle. It can hit 47 kilometers an hour, providing you're driving downhill. Besides that, on the flats on a road, you're looking at maybe mid-20s at absolute best. The second you go off-road on level terrain, you're going to drop down to a maximum of about 21. You will see on some of the softer terrains, you will drop down to into the teens in terms of maximum speed. And of course, the second you try and take a 7.1 ton tank with only 68 horsepower uphill, it drops down to single digits. Panzer IVs are far more mobile than this thing is on the ground. The speed is, it's not a lie, but it's not telling you everything you need to know. So of course, we just finished discussing survivability. Before we go into battle, we want to quickly talk about the weapon systems. Now, it's got a 7.92mm machine gun on the front. That is almost useless, but it's there. You get 2,500 rounds of ammunition. And then there's, of course, the primary launcher. Now, the launcher itself is a 5-on-5, 10-shot, 158mm rocket launching system, firing at a rate of 60 shots per minute, so 1 round per second. Now, as I just said, these are 158mm rockets. They carry high explosive warheads. And, well, they want to be pretty devastating because you only get 10. What's interesting when you look at the X-ray view is you can see racks inside the tank that should carry an additional 12 rockets. So obviously at some point, Gaijin was planning on allowing this thing for at least 1 full reload, possibly with an extra 2 rockets left over. There's 4 racks inside. Each rack carries 3 rockets, but you cannot put any rockets in the internals of the vehicle. So you get 10 at the start of the battle. The only way you can get additional rockets in the fight is either by driving back to the cap circle or driving back to the spawn point and waiting for the rockets to be reloaded once you get there. So let's keep talking about those weapon systems, shall we? After the release of the Calliope, which was ridiculously broken when it was first added to the game, there's been a bit of a misconception about exactly how powerful these rocket vehicles are. And I must admit, I was one of the people that also believed that they would be insanely overpowered too. I believe most engagements would go pretty much like that, with the rocket vehicle pretty much one-shotting whatever it hits, much like the Calliope did to the Ferdinand and the Tiger II when it was first added to the game, and even the Mouse. The truth is, shots like this are actually reasonably lucky, with the rockets usually going underneath the targeted vehicle, exploding and blowing shrapnel in from underneath. Most hits directly to front armour look more like this. 158mm high explosive rockets have almost no effect directly on the front armour of a T-34, unless of course you manage to hit the exact same weak points that you would aim at in the front of the tank if you were firing a traditional cannon at them. So moving on to the next battle, and I'm not entirely sure what it was, but I always seem to perform better on this map than any other map with this particular tank. And this is actually how most good battles in this machine go. The starters, I managed to get a side shot on an M10, so that's nice. I'll take that kill for starters. Now that took 2 rockets. Now at that range you would think, God, your aim's got to get better than that, Mags. Your aim's bloody atrocious. The truth of the matter is, aiming these things is incredibly difficult. The Panzerwerfer 42 used a different guidance system to all other rocket launchers at the time, or rocket artillery at the time, and it made it extremely accurate for a rocket artillery. It basically, rather than just using fins to guide the rockets in flight, would spin the rockets as they launch, much like you would spin a bullet or a shell coming out of a gun or a cannon in order to keep their accuracy on. And it did work. It was one of the most accurate rocket artillery of World War II. Of course, by accurate I mean that probably at least 5 out of 10 rockets fired, the rocket would land in an area that was approximately within 50 meters of the zone you intended it to go in, and even then, only when it was within 500 meters of your location. Now what you're seeing here is about the maximum range you can actually engage a target at in a Panzerwerfer 42. And this is because the launcher system only has 45 degrees of elevation at absolute maximum, and the rockets tend to just drop as they get more than about 200 or 300 meters away from your location. Once that happens, they just fall to the ground. 500 to 700 meters is about the maximum engagement range at any time. And why I did manage to kill that Sherman, because I got lucky and got him on the side as well, it took all but one of my rockets, so 3 minutes into the match, and I'm already on my way home to try and get more. And of course, you're in a vehicle with no armor, you've only got 1 rocket left, of course you're going to run into an enemy tank on the way home. Now, pay attention to where the shell goes in, through the front, hits the engine block, splinters, takes out 2 of the crew members from the front, tank removed from the crew being knocked out. Actually, while we're demonstrating how easy it is to take this tank out by just hitting the crew members, have a watch of this one. Now this was me and 2 other tanks. It's a Panzer IV behind me and a Panzer III in front of me. We're moving around to try and get a flanking position on the A cap on this particular map, and a single T-34 1942 got around our sides. One shot, and watch this penetration. Straight through the side, which you knew it would do, hits both crew members, doesn't damage a single component in the tank. The tank is completely fine, but the crew's been knocked out, so I'm out of battle. AAA vehicles with penetration values higher than 8mm will have absolutely no problems taking you out. And when you face an up tier where you'll have to take on something like an M4A376, well, you can see here, shell penetrates the front, destroys the engine, kills both crew members in the front, and the shrapnel proceeds out the back of the tank after killing the main gunner. This is fairly normal. As I said to you earlier on, this is the most common way that your tank will be taken out of battle. So, let's go back to weapons effectiveness. We know the armour is completely non-existent. The tank can be easily destroyed with almost no problems from any tank, really from any battle rating can take this thing out without a problem. The rocket launcher on this vehicle is effective out to around 700 meters. However, in reality you really wouldn't want to engage anything outside of 500. Otherwise your chance of hitting is just almost non-existent. With the limited armour and crew that this thing has, ideally you would probably want to engage targets from long range, but as I said, the launcher system simply doesn't have the range for you to be able to do that. So you need to get in close. Now, so far I've shown you that the rocket system is mostly effective most of the time, providing you get your shot off before the enemy gets to shoot you. Well, the thing is, even that is not entirely true. The truth of the matter is, the rockets are really only effective 50% of the time, if that. 158mm rockets, and that's about the best you get. And here's what happens far too regularly. Now I've got the side of this T-34, I got 2 connections in, 3 connections in there, and that didn't kill him. 158mm rockets at 20 meters range, and it didn't kill him. Direct fire. Now, he did get a shot into me, he destroyed my engine, and he damaged my turret, so I can't traverse. The turret has just repaired, but now I have to repair the tank. It's going to take me 30 seconds to get my engine running so I can move. Now, he is smart enough to have backed off. Now, there is another T-34 just ahead of me. So, I've got a concrete pillar in the way, I'm going to have to deal with that. Pillar is gone, 1 hit. T-34 in front is still alive, his tracks just swallowed it all. Now he's poking his gun out, so okay. T-34 ahead. He's just using his MG. Direct hit. Direct hit. Direct hit. 3 direct hits against the target. Did not destroy him. Spot an SU-122 that I didn't see come in. Direct hit right to its front. Did damage. Didn't kill him. And I'm out of rockets. I've got nothing that I can shoot back against these guys now. The best thing I can do is reverse and hope I make it around the corner before I get shot. But that's an SU-122 right there and 2 T-34s. Like that was ever going to happen. Notice the size of the shell in comparison to this vehicle. So, its survivability is non-existent, its weapons effectiveness is... we'll be kind and call it 50%. It's probably lower, but we'll say that 50% of the time the rockets will actually do what they need to do. The ammunition is abysmal. It has no ability to reload short of returning to base, which it's generally not fast enough to do. Oh, one other thing I've neglected to mention about it, because I haven't actually recorded a good example of it, but it only has 5 degrees of gun depression, which means if you happen to find yourself in a higher location, you have to drive out of cover in order to, and down the edge of a hill, in order to get enough down angle on the gun to be able to shoot at targets at the bottom of the hill. There's no way to just point down, regardless of what you do. Oh, and in point score for realistic battles, it's actually slightly more expensive than a medium tank to deploy. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. Basically, this thing has a lot of negatives going for it. But here's the thing, it's still really fun to drive, because as much as most of the time it is nothing but an XP pinata for the enemy team, every now and again you line up the target, you pull the trigger, and the rocket just sinks in straight away and one-shots whatever you hit. There really are few things more enjoyable in ground forces than squeezing the trigger off on this thing and just nuking a T-34 into its next match. It is beautiful when it happens. So in the long run, this has actually become one of those vehicles that has a massive amount of flaws, but yet for some reason I still actually really enjoy driving the bloody thing around. I've had a great time getting my ass handed to me over and over and over again, just for those moments when suddenly it works and it just enrages people. But the real question is, of course, is that fun worth paying for? Well, that's up to you. Personally, this tank was gifted to me by Gaijin for the purpose of this test. If I had to pay for it myself, knowing how it drives now, I would definitely go into a competition and try and grind it out in some kind of competition or challenge that Gaijin runs to get it as a gift, but I wouldn't pay for it. It's a hell of a lot of fun, but you're not going to win a match driving it. It makes a good early deployment vehicle. You send it into battle first, you dump your rockets into the first thing you see, you get destroyed, and you use the points that you earn to deploy your next tank into battle. It would also work well as a backup. If your main tank gets taken out, you roll it out, and you know you're going to be able to, well, most of the time, nuke at least one target. Most likely the one that's sitting in the middle of your cap circle. It actually is really good in this particular role, because if there's multiple tanks in the middle of your cap circle, they're high explosive rounds. You may be able to get damage on all of them if you're very lucky. But the other side is there are other medium tanks that are in every nation's tree that you could deploy out and just drop an artillery strike on the middle of the same cap circle and use your cannon. You'd have better armor and you wouldn't have to worry about running out of your 10 rockets. So my final opinions on this tank is it is nothing more than an novelty tank. Great fun, the kind of thing that I would most certainly be happy at winning at the end of the competition. But something that personally I wouldn't pay gold for. It's simply too slow, too large, has too little armor and too little ammunition to be worth the asking price in my opinion. However, your opinion may differ. Anyways, ladies and gents, hope you enjoyed the video. Click like if you do, subscribe if you want to see more. Drive smart, drive safe, and I'll catch you on the battlefield. Surprise, surprise, ladies and gents, we're not quite done yet. Welcome to bonus content. This is something I'm going to start adding at the end of all of my reviews, especially my negative ones, because, well, honestly, it's one thing to go through and say, look, this vehicle is not worth the money at this time, or at least in my opinion, it's not worth the money at this time, but a lot of the time, nobody will turn around and say, what could be done to fix that? So, keeping it short and sweet, this is an Era 2 vehicle, but it's got a battle rating of 4.3. It's going to be facing vehicles vastly more powerful than itself, and it's only efficient at researching up to Era 3 vehicles, but it's going to cost you nearly 5,000 gold. That's as simple as that. That's why it's not worth it. How do you fix it? Well, its mobility is actually fine. Actually, the core of the vehicle itself, I don't actually think anything needs to be adjusted. It's a 7.1 ton vehicle that's only got a 68 horsepower engine. I mean, shit, my first car was a 2-ton Statesman with a 400 horsepower engine. I thought that was slow. 68 horsepower and 7.1 tons. Its mobility is about exactly what it should be. The launcher system isn't overpowered. I don't think you would want to change a lot in the way the launcher actually operates, or really the rest of the vehicle. I mean, it had BogRoll armor in real life. These things were built because they were extremely cheap to produce, and when they did work, they would kill things vastly more expensive and more valuable than they were. That's why they were built. So, how do you fix it? Well, simple. There's two problems with it. Firstly, 10 shots. In real life, these things would go into battle and it would carry enough to reload the launcher twice inside. There'd be 10 in the launcher and 20 in the hull. There's spots in the hull in brackets at the moment for 12 rockets. Put at least 10 rockets inside of it and let you, when you've deployed all of the 10 rockets you come out into battle with, hit the reload button or hit your repair button in battle and have the tank automatically cycle and reload the next 10 rockets in and give it another 10 shots. So now it goes into battle with 20 shots. Also, nearly 5,000 gold, that's insane. If this thing had 20 shots, 10 in the launcher, 10 in the hull, and its cost in gold was changed to somewhere between 2,500 to 3,000 gold, it would probably be worth buying. It would probably be worth the gold. But at nearly 5,000 gold with only 10 shots, it's just not. That's what you need to change. It's just the value for the money is not there, in my opinion. And that's the area that I'd be focusing on adjusting. Hope you watch this one, Gaijin. Catch us next time.